The tow truck was already backing up to my RV when I pulled into my own driveway, the driver working fast, chains already halfway under the front axle, while a woman in a cream blazer stood off to the side with a clipboard, watching the whole thing like she was overseeing a routine pickup rather than the removal of an $80,000 vehicle from land I owned outright. I didn't get out of my truck right away. I just sat there for a moment watching, because something about the scene struck me as almost funny before it struck me as infuriating, and I wanted to be sure of what I was looking at before I said a single word. My name is Grant Ostrowski. I'm 50 years old, and 15 years ago, back when I was still working long-haul freight routes and saving every spare dollar I could, I bought a controlling stake in a regional towing and vehicle recovery company called Pinnacle Recovery Services, the same company that operates most of the tow contracts for 3 counties in this part of the state, including, as it turned out, whatever contract the Brookstone Ridge Homeowners Association believed authorized them to remove my RV from my own 5 acres that afternoon. I want to be clear that I don't run the day-to-day operations myself. I have a general manager who handles dispatch, billing, and client contracts, and I mostly stay out of it beyond reviewing quarterly numbers and occasionally stopping by the yard, which meant standing in my own driveway watching one of my own trucks hook up to my own RV. I was looking at a situation my own company had apparently gotten itself into without anyone bothering to check whose property they were actually driving onto. I bought that RV 2 years earlier, a 6th-wheel model I'd been saving toward for the better part of a decade, intending to finally take the long retirement trip my wife and I had been talking about since before either of us had gray hair. I parked it on a graded gravel pad at the back of my 5 acres, well clear of my house, in a spot I'd specifically built for exactly this purpose after we bought the property. Brookstone Ridge, the gated community bordering my land on 2 sides, had sent me a handful of letters over the previous 8 months, informing me that my RV violated what they called their Visual Buffer Zone Ordinance, a provision restricting large recreational vehicles from being visible from any adjoining Brookstone Ridge lot. I want to note plainly that my land had never been part of Brookstone Ridge, had never been subject to their covenants, and sat entirely outside their platted boundary, a fact I'd confirmed with the county the very first time one of those letters arrived. I'd ignored the letters after that first confirmation, mostly because I genuinely didn't think an association with no jurisdiction over my land would actually escalate to physically removing my property. I was wrong about that, and the woman standing beside that tow truck with her clipboard, a woman I would soon learn was named Bettina Ashcroft, president of the Brookstone Ridge Homeowners Association, clearly believed otherwise. I got out of my truck and walked over slowly, and I want to describe exactly what I said, because I kept my voice level the entire time, mostly out of old habit from years of handling difficult freight disputes, where getting loud never solved anything faster. "Ma'am," I said, "I'd like to know what authority you believe you have to remove a vehicle from private property outside your association's boundary." Bettina looked at me with the particular confidence of someone who has already decided how this conversation is going to go. "Mr. Ostrowski, your RV has been in violation of our visual buffer ordinance for 8 months. We've sent multiple notices. We're well within our rights to have it removed at this point." "This land isn't part of Brookstone Ridge," I said. "The county confirmed that to me directly months ago. Our attorney reviewed the matter and confirmed the ordinance applies to any structure visible from our boundary line, regardless of underlying property lines," she said, in the tone of someone reciting a talking point rather than actually engaging with what I'd just told her. I glanced over at the tow truck driver, a younger man who'd stopped working the chains and was now watching our exchange with the particular discomfort of someone who suspects he's caught in the middle of something considerably bigger than a routine dispatch call. "What company is this?" I asked him directly. "Pinnacle Recovery," he said. "We've got a standing contract with Brookstone Ridge for enforcement removals." I want to explain what went through my mind in that exact moment because it wasn't anger yet, not really. It was the same steady, almost clinical curiosity I used to bring to a load manifest that didn't quite add up during my freight years. I own Pinnacle Recovery. I know better than almost anyone exactly what our standard contracts require before we dispatch a truck for a residential removal, and a homeowners association ordinance covering land outside its own platted boundary was not, under any version of our own company's policy, sufficient authorization for anything. "I need you to stand down on this," I told the driver. "This vehicle isn't going anywhere today. Bettina's composure slipped for the first time. "Excuse me, you have no authority to instruct their driver." I pulled out my phone, called my general manager directly, and asked her to confirm, right there in front of Bettina, exactly whose name sat on the ownership documents for Pinnacle Recovery Services. My general manager, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Delphine Acaffer who'd run daily operations for nearly a decade, answered the question plainly, audible enough that Bettina could hear every word. "Grant Ostrowski holds 60% ownership and serves as the company's controlling principal," Delphine said. "Grant, is everything all right out there?" I watched Bettina's face change in real time, moving through confusion, recalculation, and something considerably closer to alarm, as she processed the fact that the homeowner she'd just had a tow truck dispatched against happened to own the towing company itself. "I'd like to understand," I said, once I'd hung up with Delphine, "exactly how Brookstone Ridge secured a contract with my own company to remove vehicles from land outside your jurisdiction." Bettina's explanation, once she recovered enough composure to offer one, described a standing enforcement agreement Brookstone Ridge had maintained with Pinnacle Recovery for several years, predating my own majority ownership stake, which I'd acquired through a partial buyout roughly 4 years earlier, without personally reviewing every legacy client contract still on the books. I called Delphine back that same evening and asked her to pull the full Brookstone Ridge contract for my own review. What I found troubled me considerably more than my own individual dispute. The contract authorized removals for vehicles violating association covenants, but contained no provision whatsoever addressing properties outside the association's own recorded boundary, meaning every single dispatch under that contract should have required, at minimum, a basic confirmation that the target vehicle actually sat on land subject to Brookstone Ridge's authority in the first place. "How many dispatches have we run under this contract over the past year?" I asked Delphine. She pulled the records within a day. 14 separate removals over the preceding 12 months, and cross-referencing the addresses against county parcel maps, 3 of them, myself included, involved properties sitting entirely outside Brookstone Ridge's platted boundary. I want to be fair and note that this wasn't a case of my own company knowingly participating in unauthorized removals. Our dispatchers had simply processed Brookstone Ridge's requests based on the association's own assertion that each vehicle fell under contract, the same way any towing company operates on the good faith representation of the client requesting the service, never independently verifying property lines for every single dispatch unless something specifically flagged a concern. But good faith on my own company's part didn't change the underlying problem on Brookstone Ridge's end. Bettina's association had been directing tow removals against properties outside their own authority for at least a year, relying on my own company's standard practice of trusting client representations, and had very nearly succeeded in doing exactly that to me before I happened to own the very company they were using to do it. I called an attorney the following morning, a sharp, methodical woman named Perpetua Alderidge, who I'd used for corporate matters over the years, and laid out the full situation. She reviewed the contract, the county parcel records, and the list of prior removals, and called me back within 2 days. "This is about as clean a case of overreach as I've seen," she told me. "Brookstone Ridge has been directing your own company to remove vehicles from properties they had no legal authority over, and at least 2 other homeowners beyond yourself appear to have lost property to the exact same pattern." I asked her what I actually wanted to do about it, and I want to be honest that my instinct wasn't simply to walk away satisfied that my own RV had been saved. 2 other homeowners had already lost vehicles to tows my own company had, in good faith but mistakenly, carried out on Brookstone Ridge's behalf. Perpetua drafted a formal letter to the Brookstone Ridge Board, laying out the full pattern, the 3 properties outside the association's jurisdiction, and a demand that the association compensate every affected homeowner for the towing costs, storage fees, and any resulting damage from the improper removals, along with a formal termination of the standing contract between Brookstone Ridge and Pinnacle Recovery, effective immediately. The board called an emergency session once that letter arrived, and I attended, alongside Perpetua and one of the other affected homeowners, a retired mechanic named Fenwick Ose, who'd lost a work trailer to an identical removal 8 months earlier, and had simply paid the retrieval fee at the time, never realizing the tow had been improperly authorized in the first place. Bettina opened the meeting attempting to characterize the pattern as an unfortunate boundary interpretation dispute, rather than anything more serious. But a board member named Cassius Delgado, who I hadn't dealt with directly before, asked the question that settled the room's understanding fairly quickly. "Bettina," he said, "did the board ever verify that these 3 properties actually fell within our platted boundary before authorizing removal, or did we simply assume our own ordinance applied wherever we decided it should?" Bettina didn't have an answer that satisfied anyone in that room. The board voted that same night to compensate all 3 affected homeowners in full, terminate the towing contract, and adopt a formal policy requiring boundary verification against county records before any future enforcement action against a vehicle near the association's edge. Bettina remained on the board, having handled the confrontation, once it actually happened, with more accountability than the underlying pattern might have suggested she was capable of. My RV still sits on that same gravel pad, exactly where I built it to sit, and my wife and I finally took that long-delayed trip the following spring, no tow trucks involved. I still own Pinnacle Recovery, still mostly stay out of daily operations, but I've made it a personal habit now to review every standing client contract at least once a year myself, a lesson that cost 2 of my neighbors a temporary loss of their own property before I finally learned it. If this story hit home for you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep growing. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because there are plenty more stories just like this one still to come. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you thought of this one, or whether an HOA has ever tried to enforce a rule on land that was never actually theirs to control. I read every single comment, and honestly, some of the best stories on this channel started as a comment somebody left on a video just like this.